Fellow writers, I am here. I am started. This is the very first post. This is where it's all going to begin, right here, where I'm planning my very first planned novel as a pantser. And we're starting with the story grid because you got to start with the story grid, I think. And here we go. That there are spoilers in effect. So we start at the beginning, as we say. And the beginning of every great story starts once upon a time. This is how I teach Vienne, my 6-year-old daughter, to write stories with these 5 sentences. Once upon a time there was, in my case, a freelancer named Renee Olson who thought she was 21 but was actually 36. And every day she avoided social situations and making choices while living in a world of her own making. Until one day, Renee came face to face with the realization that she hadn't done anything meaningful with her life by starting a new job with a woman who was actually 21. And because of that, she emulates the behavior of her colleagues, trying to do what she should do, and triggers her imaginary friends to rebel and sabotage her life, isolating her from everyone and everything. Until finally she faces her fears and embraces the reality of who she is and not what she pretends to be. That is my story in a nutshell. In 5 sentences, 5 long sentences. They're kind of run-on sentences, but we're just going with it. As I said, I've never ever done more than this. This is it. This is the extent of my planning. And actually, I don't think I usually get this far. I usually only have once upon a time there was. I might have up until one day, but that's it. Now, this is interesting. You can see on the screen, I'm looking at this article on StoryGrid, and they break this up at the beginning hook. So one day is at the middle build. But the thing is, my one day is my inciting incident. So now I'm wondering if I need to rethink that entirely. Let me know in the comments how you go with your planning, but we're going to start here. So this is the article called Using Foolscap to Draft Your Novel, and I have already given it a start, so dun 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 dun, as my Foolscap. This is copied directly from the story grid right there. You can sign up and download that as well. I should probably get, there we go. I can see it. I'm wondering if I should switch these two, but I'm going to leave them for now. I've called the internal genre a psychological thriller because all the imaginary characters are sort of floating around in Renee's head. They're not actually doing anything in reality, although they are affecting reality because they take control of Renee's body and make her do things that are not cool. A lot of inspiration from The Invisible Man with Elizabeth Moss. That was a good movie I recommend. Other movies that have influenced this idea are obviously Fight Club. I'll reference it a lot. And funnily enough, Devil Wears Prada. And it's been pointed out to me that it's very ironic that I've chosen these movies as my reference points because they are not my favorite movies. But that is actually exactly why I've chosen them. If I found a movie that I love and I thought it's wonderful and I love it and I love everything about it, I don't feel the need to write a story that is at all similar. I would write a new story. So I am taking these ideas that I've been inspired by these stories and I'm making them my own and I'm changing what I don't like about it. So as I said, spoiler alert, and I might spoil these movies for you. So pause, go watch those movies if you don't want that spoiled either. But you're still with me and I'm spoiling everything about this book that I'm hoping you'll want to read. So there's that as well. So I'm not sure about this. I've always written in the first person, but I'm thinking I might write this in the third person because Renee is going to be an unreliable narrator, well, the third person is going to be an unreliable narrator anyway. But if I make Renee first person narrator, the unreliable narrator, that's just going to make it even more chaotic and harder to follow, I think. I think having sort of that step back will help keep things a little bit more grounded. So I started here, and I don't think I like this anymore. I'm going to change that. I don't know what I'm going to change that to. But I don't like that because I think I don't want Renee and Lucy to make friends too soon. I'm feeling that since I wrote this already. But yeah, so my progressive incident is Renee taking Zoe's job, Zoe being the 21-year-old I mentioned in my summary. But I'm not sure about that. So the Story Grid podcast, which I highly recommend, it's linked below, I feel that they say to start with this Foolscap, but I'm feeling like this Foolscap might be a little bit more advanced for a pantser like me. Because I feel like I need to start somewhere a little more pantsy and upgrade to this. This feels very deep diving into the planning here. So I think I'm going to leave it here at this sort of unfinished version. And one of the articles that I mentioned, or the podcasts that I mentioned as well as the Foolscap Story Grid from May 2017, there's 2 episodes. Also the How to Start a New Novel from January 2020. And that one, at the end of that episode, Tim decides he's going to go and he's going to write a bunch of sample scenes to kind of get in the head of his characters and his narrator. And I think I'm going to start there. I think that's the best way. And I'm going to start with Story Grid episode scenes. I'm going to start with Story Grid scenes. So they have 14, a list of sort of 14 classic scenes. And I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask those deep diving questions, or those 5 editor questions that is also in the Story Grid podcast as well. After I've written them, I'll come back and I'll talk through maybe 1 or 2. But if you want to read those scenes, you'll need to head over to my Patreon account, because I'm going to post them all in there. And I don't know if they'll make it into the novel. I don't know if they'll be any good. But they'll kind of get me in the head of that sort of space. And then after I've done that, I will come back to the Foolscap Global Story Grid, and I will look at that again after I've had that kind of thought and figured that out as well. And I'm also going to, before I do this as well, I think I'm going to go and start the planning at Abby, link below. I'll talk more about her as well and what she does, because she has a different approach, very scientific as well. This is more maths, but the other is more scientific. And I feel like if I kind of get my head around those kinds of ideas at the start, we might get to a good place in the end and everything will be good. I hope. So thank you for joining me today as I start here, and we'll move forward and do our best. Thanks, guys. And meet me over at the Patreon, and well, let's get writing, planning.